It's finally time for us to talk about it. Volleyball rotations, what are they? What are they used for? Why would you choose the one you did? And all of that. Let's get right into it. So a long-awaited video on my channel was talking about some of the volleyball rotations. Why are they used? Why do we do it? What the heck is a 5-1 and all of that. And I can tell you, when I first started playing volleyball rotations were the worst. They were the worst, okay? I felt like I really just wanted to focus on the game and I didn't really want to focus on rotations, and it was really confusing when people were running past me and I didn't know what to do. So I'm gonna break it down for you and talk a little bit more about some tools you can do to get better. There are many types of volleyball rotations and they vary in the level of difficulty. A lot of teams that you go and you play on, especially middle and high school, will run really standard volleyball rotations, so that way it's easier for players to be able to understand because you are learning at the same time as you're playing. So we don't want to give you something that's so complicated that you don't really can conceptualize exactly what's going on. So some of the most popular volleyball rotations that I'm sure that you're familiar with and you've heard your coach say it is a 4-2, a 5-1, and a 6-2. There are other volleyball rotations that are a little bit more complicated to be able to do. However, we're going to talk about these three today, so that way we can talk a little bit more about what they are used for, what they kind of look like, and a cool tool that I found that may be able to help explain it much better. So we're going to go to my computer actually, so we can look at some of the things on my computer and I can draw a little bit for you. So I thought it would be really good to bring out my PowerPoint presentation skills and show you better than I can tell you. So here I'm going to show you a little bit more about the zones, and we've talked about court zones before. As you can see, the volleyball court zones are 6 zones and they are named numerically 1 to 6, with 1 being the spot in which players serve. If you're not familiar with the front row is before the 10-foot line and the back row is behind the 10-foot line. And sometimes it is called the 3-meter line. And this is what it looks like on both sides of the court. And I want you to remember these numbers, and you should actually get to know these numbers pretty seriously, because these are what we use for our serving zones. And this is how we use to figure out where to line up, especially if your coach is calling you out by number. So the volleyball home base is the position that you're going to back to after you rotate. The reason that we rotate is so that everyone has the opportunity to serve. We have to make sure not to overlap nearby players to stay in rotation in the way that we are lining up. So here are some of the volleyball rotation overlap rules. No player can overlap with players directly in front of them or behind them, or directly to the left and right of them. That is why sometimes you'll see players that are stacking up together and they're very bunched up in the front, because they want to get closer to the position that they're going to play and they cannot overlap each other. So overlap is very detailed, and we see overlap happen different ways, and they can be specific to the way that your coach wants you to overlap. So all that hard stuff, but why do we rotate? Each time a team sides out, which means when you get the serve back, all the 6 players are going to rotate 1 position clockwise around the court. Before the next serve, all the players must be lined up correctly. You can actually get points taken away when you're called out of system or out of rotation. Before we keep in mind and we talk about some of these numerical rotations, I want you to remember that the first number of the rotation is how many hitters are on the court. The second number on the rotation is how many setters are on the court. So 5-1, 5 hitters, 1 setter. So believe me, I know how hard of a topic that this is, and I know how confusing that it is. Believe me, I know. But I wanted to talk about some of the basic rotations that you're going to see, starting with the 6-6. So some of the most popular rotations is the 6-6, in which every player is going to set, defend, and attack, and this is what we call the round robin. Many players begin with this type of rotation or start working on this rotation in their physical education class or beginning recreational volleyball. This is the way that many players try different positions for the first time. Typically, this is pretty easy as a rotation. However, it is not the strongest because it does not allow the players to be placed in their strongest position.
Kind of ignorant. You don't care what people say, people say, people say.
Next up, we're moving to more standard volleyball rotations, which is the 4-2. This is an easy rotation that really focuses on dedicating 2 setters to really control the offense. This is a rotation that we see most in middle school in the starting rotation in which volleyball beginners start to work on. So when you start working on rotations, this is most likely the rotation that you're going to begin, especially since the dedicated setters, this is where you all are going to shine. The setters have a specific job in this rotation, and that is to get the second ball and control the speed of the offense. So now we get into some harder rotations, the 6-2. This rotation is a bit harder, and it's harder because this is when we start to see 2 setters that rotate around and they are opposite of each other, and they ensure that the setters don't get as fatigued. And when one of them is setting, typically the back row, the front row player can play as a right side hitter, so you get some swing time too. This is also the rotation in which players can play their rotation, and we start to see dedicated positioning, such as outside hitters, middle blockers, a libero, defenders, and typical volleyball positioning. This is the rotation that your coach is trying to work you into. Everyone in this rotation has a job, and they're pretty good at it. Now we have one of the harder rotations, the old trusty, the 5-1. This is the most common, and we see in high school and college. This is the GOAT. It is a very hard rotation to learn because people move quickly and you have to know where to go. I do not recommend doing the 5-1 for beginners because it's just so much going on. It's crazy. It's fast. Things are flying. It's a lot to get behind. But this is also one of the easiest rotations to get confused. Everyone here has a job, and the setter is the only setter, and they are working, so get out the way. This is also a very strong rotation because each player is covering their zone and it's dedicated. We also see the right side hitter in this rotation. So right side, where you at, this is where you shine. But the 5-1 is old trusty. Now, here's a fun fact. After every rotation, so let's say that you're lined up on the court and you're in your rotation, making sure that you didn't overlap anyone. After the ball goes over the net, that is when you see individuals go back to their home base. So let's say that you're the outside hitter, and right now you are all the way in the right side position. When the ball goes over the net, that is when you're going to run back to your original home base. That is why we see a lot of running on the court. Now, for a long time, I have maintained that teaching rotation online is extremely difficult, and it's one of those things where you have to learn it in person, especially since everybody chooses to stack differently, everybody teaches it differently, but I wanted to give you the basics. This tool that I found on Learn Volley has an opportunity to show you the zones, show you some sample rotations, and it even has a button where you can push play, and it can show you how the ball would move if you were in serve or receive for different rotations. I think this is invaluable, and I think that this is something that you should look at, especially if you're trying to look at for your specific position. And I wish this tool was out when I started playing volleyball. So I hope that you check out Learn Volley and check it in the description to see more how those rotations are working and how the players are moving along with the ball. I hope this video was helpful. I hope that it really did give you a better idea of what these tools look like. Make sure you please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.